Hey, in this week's video, I want to talk about the direction of your sales team and which way it's headed. In most cases, it's either everything's going well and you're on the way up, or you can't sell anything and everybody's moving in the wrong direction. And you can see I have Mob behind me. I was listening to the Jocko podcast yesterday, and if you don't know who Jocko is, he was a Navy SEAL. Now he has his own company. He works with other companies on consulting and leadership. And his point was this: whether you have a platoon or a sales team or a troop, the mob is usually headed in a certain direction. And it's your job as the leader to make sure it's headed in the correct direction. And as soon as he said this, he brought up something that is near and dear to my heart. Was he said, as the leader, you got to take the emotion out of it. And I struggled so much in my first couple years as a sales leader because everything was subjective and emotional for me. And it just puts you in a bad state most of the time. It puts you in arguments. It just doesn't put you in the right state of mind. It wasn't until I took a lot of the emotion out of it by making everything objective. And that's a big thing that I talk about all the time is make it objective, take the emotion out of it so it's black and white and it's clear as day. Because that makes it easier for you, the leader, and for your team to understand where they are at all the time. And as I started thinking about this mob more, I started thinking about the ATM approach. A stands for awesome, T stands for typical, which is kind of the mob on your team. M stands for mess. But the typical rep, which is going to be 70 to 80% of your team in most cases, is usually moving one direction or the other. And when they're moving towards being an awesome rep versus being a mess rep, that's when it's a lot of fun. And your team's going to get recognition because they're doing well. But some ways that I try and stay ahead of this, both with teams I've managed in the past and clients that I'm working with right now, is I always want to know what the leading indicator is. And if your leading indicator is booking meetings, if it's approaching people in a store, whatever that is, the leading indicator is the number that I always want to know. Because when I've had teams that everything is going well, they're closing deals, everything's going right, a lot of the times that's when I'll push because we have momentum. And when you have momentum, everything is easier. A lot of the times human nature is you have that really good month, your pipeline's full, you close a bunch of deals, then you take your foot off the pedal on the other side, and then you're kind of behind all of a sudden 2 weeks later. I always like to stay ahead of those problems by staying on top of that leading indicator. And it works the other way too. If you have that leading indicator, which is always strong and always full, but your main metric is a little bit behind, I don't push then. I'm actually very supportive of them and say, hey, we're doing all the right things. It's just a matter of time before it catches up. So that's kind of the opposite, I think, of how a lot of people do it. But I like to push when everything's going well. And then as long as my leading indicator is good at the end, I'm supportive and know things are going to fall. But keep your mob headed in the right direction, but do that understanding your sales math and knowing, hey, are we set up to win next month and I'm proactive about everything? Or am I waiting to the last second where it's panic mode and now it makes it very tough to catch up? Hey, hope this helped. Have a good week.